Just some good news about the Messenger of Hope Mission podcast. We are on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Spotify, and soon to be YouTube Podcast. Check us out, follow us, and share us with your friends.
You're listening to the Messengers of Hope Mission podcast with your host, Bob Gardner.
Interested in cryptocurrency? You probably have already heard of Bitcoin. Hex cryptocurrency is like Bitcoin, but better. Hex is decentralized. You can lock up Hex for a fixed period of time to receive awards, just like a certificate of deposit at your bank. This yields averages far more than what traditional banks offer. The rewards are paid from inflation. No one owes anybody anything, and there are no middlemen in Hex. In Hex, you're the bank. The more you learn about Hex, the more you'll love it. Buying Hex cryptocurrency is as complex as setting up an email account. To find out more, go to hex.com.
Hey guys, I hope you're having an amazing day today and that you're enjoying this weather that we've been having so far this year. It's been a little cold for Florida. Of course, now it's warming up again. I think today's going to be in the 80s, so that's something to look forward to if you like the warmer weather. Me, personally, I prefer when it's a little bit colder, so I'm not looking forward to the summer months, but it's only a matter of time before we get back to the nice cooler weather in the fall. Ha. So with temperatures in mind, let me talk a little bit about our building, our warehouse that we have, Messengers of Hope headquarters, if you will, or as I like to call it, the Hall of Mercy. Kind of, you ever were a kid and watched the Super Friends, you had the Hall of Justice. Well, we like to call it, or I like to call it, the Hall of Mercy. Kind of a little tongue-in-cheek reference there. But going back to the weather, we have that warehouse, and unfortunately that warehouse gets very, very warm during the summer months, especially in the afternoon. Now, we have climate control in there, we have an AC, but the AC really is only for a building half the size that we have. And we, of course, would love to have a better AC unit, but there's a lot of logistics that would go involved with getting a larger unit. Obviously, the cost of the unit itself, the installation of the unit, and then the electric for the unit. But the way we have the building set up right now, we have the unit which is set up for, like I said, half the size, and we have a fan in there that blows it around. So in the morning in the summertime months, and of course, here in the spring when it starts getting much hotter into the 80s and of course then into the 90s, that it only really just takes the edge off of the heat there. The building is insulated as best that it can, so there's nothing really more that we can do with that. There might be a few things, but there's all sorts of logistics that would go into that as well, like these plastic flaps that you see like over other buildings, like a grocery store in the back. If you ever driven past one, you'll see there's plastic flaps over the bay doors. There's a whole legal and logistic thing involved with putting those on, and I don't think that's an option for us, so we have to go back to looking at AC units. So why am I talking about this today? Well, we have a lot of people that come and work at our building, a lot of volunteers, and it's hard for people to work there inside the building when it's so hot. And of course, when it's hot out, we can't open the doors because that would just let out any AC that we have. And again, we use the fan, but that's very noisy when it's in there, so it's very disruptive. You can't have good communication. So right now, today, I thought I would talk about that and kind of our need of having the AC unit increased at our building. Maybe that's something that you have the ability to help us with, or somebody that have the ability to help us, but it's a very necessary thing. So we kind of keep the AC unit set at 78 degrees, which is the highest that we're allowed to keep it at. Now, the building still gets hotter than that, unfortunately, in the afternoons, and that is not always a good thing. Like I said, we employ fans to help with that, but it doesn't make it any cooler. It just kind of circulates the air that's in there. Now, we need to try to get the AC temperature down to 76 in there consistently. So we're going to be looking at options for more AC units, and of course, that means more expense and something that we are struggling to make sure that we maintain because we already have a lot of expenses. Now, with that, this week I have spent a lot of time looking for grants that we could apply for. Now, I'm not a grant writer at all. I write the grants for Messengers of Hope, but that does not mean that I am proficient at it or that I'm even good at it in any way. The grants that we get are smaller grants, and they don't expect a grant writer to be writing these things. But the ones that we're going to be looking at coming forward, we're going to need help with. It's going to have to be more than what I can do. Again, I'm not a professional grant writer, and we need somebody that knows how to do this, that can step in and do this. So I know what you're thinking. Why don't you just hire a grant writer? Well, there's a lot of reasons why we can't hire a grant writer. For one, some grants you can't hire a grant writer. You can't have a grant writer do it. I don't know all the legal side of that, but I know there are some grants that we apply for that we can't have a grant writer for. Now, a grant writer could be on staff and say be an administrative assistant, and then they can write the grants, but they can't have the title grant writer. And then, of course, there is the problem of actually hiring a grant writer. So if you had someone on staff that is able to write grants, you have to be able to pay for them to do that. And then if you say, well, why don't you hire them as on a as needed basis? Well, grant writers are extremely expensive. So there's one that I reached out to this week, and I'm sure he does a good job, and I'm sure he's worth the money. But just to research grants that we could apply for, it would cost us $40 an hour for him to research these things. And then, of course, writing a grant takes anywhere between, what I'm researching myself, takes anywhere between 20 to 30 hours to write a single grant. So, you add that up, and we're talking, over $1,000, probably over $2,000 just to find and write one grant. And that's not something that we have the budget for. So finding grants is one thing, finding a grant writer is another thing, paying for all this thing is another thing entirely different. Again, I will be writing grants this year. I'll be doing the grants that we normally get, the smaller ones, United Way, Walmart, and so on and so forth, Publix. And some of these I've already written, some of them are going to be opening soon, and I'll be writing. But I am not a grant writer. It is not my forte. I've learned to do this since forming Messengers of Hope over just about 10 years ago. I had to learn how to write grants, and I've gotten better, don't get me wrong, but I am by no means a professional grant writer. If you look at the bigger organizations, I'm not talking about the huge ones like Salvation Army or something like that. I'm talking about the smaller ones like United Way or Humane Society. The smaller ones that are independent, they have people on staff that do this, and they're actually able to write grants or get grants written so that they can get money to hire people as well. And those grants are out there as well. I don't know how to get them. I've been looking, but it's not, again, my forte. But I am looking. I am trying to research this stuff, and if I have to be the one to do it, I'll do it. But if someone's out there listening to this or knows somebody that would be willing to help us, boy, please get in touch with us. That is something that we really, really desperately need. So back to the AC unit. We want to be in compliance with everything that we can so we can get more food. There's things like USDA that we would love to be able to get, but of course we have to be in compliance with things like the temperature of the warehouse and how we store food. We're in compliance with almost everything on what they need, but the one thing would be the temperature that we'd have to get into place. Now we have freezers in there and we have refrigerators in there, and of course there's no venting system for them. There's no way really to do that. Now if we could get a walk-in freezer and have someone come and put ductwork on the walk-in freezer and the walk-in refrigerator, we could vent that outside, and that would actually help a little bit. But it's still really just the summertime heat and the heat of Florida that would make the room, the warehouse, too warm to be able to comply. So we're looking at grants to be able to do this stuff, and we're looking at funding options. Right now, the way Messengers of Hope is funded is about 50% of what we get every year comes in from grants. Now that's, again, from Publix, Walmart, United Way, other local grants, like we got one from Tampa Bay 10 News last year, and we get them from other places. And if I start naming them, I'm going to leave some out, so I'm not going to do that. About 20% comes in from sponsorship. That's local businesses that sponsor either the bus or the t-shirt or the podcast. That's about 20%. And then the remainder is from individuals that would, donate. Individuals, churches, clubs, and things of that nature that would donate. And that's the other approximately 30% of what we have come in, at least historically. Every year is a little bit different. Those numbers are not hard set. So, it could be off like 5-10% depending on the category. But we always need that money coming in, and that is kind of the breakdown. Now, if we could get more grants, we could do more. And of course, if people donate more, we could do more. But typically the average donation of what we get from an individual is between $25 and $50 per month, which is fine. That's kind of what we need. We need people donating that. If you could donate more, then great. But if you can't, that we've got a ton of people that donate $5 or $10 a month, and that adds up. So when I say the average is between $25 and $50 a month, that doesn't mean that people are donating that. That's just the average number of people that where it falls in. So it's very different every month and things like that. Even month to month it can be different because we get a lot of one-time donations. Actually, we had a couple big one-time donations last year, and we even had a fair size one-time donation this week, which really helps. But it all adds up. And, again, I'm not going to go too much into budget, but our budget this year is $96,000, which means $8,000 a month has got to come in for us to reach that budget. We're doing okay so far this year, but typically March, April, May, and June are very low giving months. And then again, in August, when school starts, is a low giving month. So we have to prepare for those months because we still need the money those months. But back to what I'm saying about grant writing and the AC unit. So we want to make sure that we are able to do this stuff so that we're not taxing what we're already getting. We can only draw so much on what we're already getting to do the things that we need to do because that money is already being used in other areas. That pays for a rent, that pays for our utilities, that pays for insurance, that pays for fuel. It pays for the cost of getting food. And, we need all of that in place to be able to do what we do. And now it comes to really the crux of it. In order for us to grow beyond what we're doing now, of course, we're growing a little bit. We're adding a new stop this month, and I hope to add even another stop this year. So that will take us from 6 to 7 stops this month, and I hope to get to 8 stops. When I say stops, I mean locations. Some of those are weekly, some of those are bi-weekly, some of those are once a month. But I want to be able to add even another stop this year to get us to 8. And we could probably do 1 or 2 more. We might be able to pull off 10 stops a month the way we're currently doing things if we can increase a little bit of money coming in. But in order to really grow past that, you need to start having a staff involved. Now, a staff would mean that you have to pay somebody. We have a great volunteer staff. Don't get me wrong. The volunteers come in and do everything, but you can't always depend on a volunteer staff to be there. If they have something else coming up, they have to go do that other thing. It's not like a job where, when you're at a job, you can't just, not go into work one day. You do that a few times and you're not going to have a job. For a volunteer staff, you can say, well, I'm not going to be there for the next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks. And, it's fine because they're volunteer and that's the way it works. But in order for us to really get to the next level, we need to start thinking about having a staff. Now, I know a lot of people go, well, I don't want to donate to any nonprofit that pays people to work. Well, that's pie in the sky thinking. That's not realistic. Every organization that grows to a certain size actually has to have money in to pay staff. It takes people to work. And you know what? People are worth their time. I can tell you that I have some volunteers that have been volunteering for a long time and they do it for free, but I know it's a hardship for them and I would love to be able to have them on as staff, but we don't have the budget for that. That being said, if we can get a grant that would allow us to be able to pay staff, they would be the very first ones that I would look at paying. I would find a way of figuring that out. Of course, I'd have to go through all the legalese of figuring that out, and that's something new I'd have to learn, or have an accountant that would help us with that. And again, another fee. So why am I rambling on about all this stuff today? Well, simple. I'm throwing out a smorgasbord of things that we are wanting to do and things that we are needing to do because we are really on the precipice of growing into something more. Of course, we can continue to do what we're doing and kind of do that indefinitely, but eventually what's going to happen is things are going to get so expensive that we can't even afford that. So if you're not growing, eventually you're going to basically die, just like a plant. If it doesn't keep growing, it's going to die eventually. It can't be kept in the same pot indefinitely. It's got to grow. And that's where Messengers of Hope is at. We are at the point where we need to really start focusing on how we're going to grow. Now, I don't want to grow aggressively. I want to grow reasonably. I don't want to grow to the point where we're going, oh, let's get all these people involved, and then we become, something that is just nothing but red tape and bureaucracy. I don't want to do that. I want to grow at a natural level where we can continue to do the things that we're doing on a bigger and better scale, reaching to more people, reaching more areas. So I hope that those of you who are listening are on board with this, and I hope that if you have ideas, you're willing to share them, especially if you have resources. Just ideas alone, believe me, I get a billion ideas every year. Ideas are something that I don't always need. What I need is how to make those ideas reality and how I can bring messages of hope forward and make it a bigger and better, more efficient ministry for reaching the people that are in need. Now, changing the subject just a little bit, we're getting ready for this upcoming weekend. Of course, we have our Saturday pantry in Newport Richey, which again, Deb Jones leads, and she has already gotten some food for that, and she'll be coming back on, I think, Friday to get more food, and then doing the pickups on Saturday morning from the local stores to be able to give out food. And that pantry has been growing. She has noticed an increase, and of course, she's keeping track of numbers for me, and hopefully in the next podcast, I can share those numbers with you. I just don't have them in front of me right now, but it's been growing at a steady level. Matter of fact, all of our pantries have been growing at a steady level. So that is the Saturday morning one. And then, of course, we have the two on Sunday this week. It's the first Sunday of the month. So we have the one in Odessa right at our building from 12 to 1. And then we go to Newport Richey and have our 2:30 to 4 o'clock one on pretty much the corner of Congress and Ridge. Keep that one in your thoughts and minds and prayers and hopes, because the parking lot we've been using now for 5 years, it was bought out by another company, and I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be there. So we have to find a close by location that will be able to, one, house us, be able to take all the room and the cars that show up and the people that show up, but two, would be receptive to us being there. So that is something that we have to consider as well. And then also, the bus that we have, the Jackson Davis Project bus, the food pantry that we lovingly call the Eagle because it was an Eagle Scout project, that is going to be going to the Pasco Touch a Truck this upcoming Saturday. I understand it's somewhere in Newport Richey, but if you want to see the bus firsthand, go to the Touch a Truck and check it out. It will be right near the Boy Scouts, from what I understand. Go and see it and go on board, take a look, get a tour of it. You'll get to see firsthand what the bus looks like. So the Davises will be bringing it there, and again, I think it'll be right next to the Scouts set up for Touch a Truck. I want to take a moment and once again thank our sponsor, which is Hex.com. Hex.com is a BitCurrency like Bitcoin, but better. And yes, I do have Hex currency. I've got the app and I follow it, and it's fun kind of watching that. But I want to thank them. They are a sponsor of Messengers of Hope, not only for the podcast, but they also have sponsored Messenger of Hope, directly donated to us, and they've also sponsored the bus when it was being built with the Scouts, Jackson Davis. So I want to thank Hex.com rather, and all that they have done to help Messengers of Hope. They're great people that own it and run it, and great family that works with Messengers of Hope as well. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Messenger of Hope Mission Podcast. I hope that you enjoyed it. I know I kind of rambled on about things. Again, it was a smorgasbord of things getting thrown out there. And if you have the ability to help us in any way, please reach out to us. We would love that. If you want to volunteer with us, you can do that as well. And of course, you can donate to Messenger of Hope right on our Facebook page. There's a portal on there if you want to do it online, or if you'd like to send us a check, you can find the address right on there as well. And those are tax deductible donations, because Messengers of Hope Mission is a registered 501c3 with the IRS. Thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate it. Catch you next week. I'd like to take a minute or two to talk about some of the needs that we at Messengers of Hope have. And if you've been listening to the podcast, some of the needs you'll have heard before, such as we need chest freezers. We need a lot of them. We need at least 3 or 4 more. We just got one recently, thanks to Steve and Sally Wallace, donating one in honor of Sally's sister who recently passed away. And we're very grateful for that. But that being said, we still need more freezers. We could use, like I said, 3 or 4 more. And the reason for that is because we get a lot of frozen food in and we have a high turnover with frozen food. But oftentimes we'll get stuff from the stores much more than we are capable of holding. And what we've done in the past is we've given it to other pantries. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that we can do that. But that puts us a little bit behind the 8 ball when that happens, because then we're giving away the food that we could be giving away to people, and we're giving it to other pantries. Often that happens because we just don't have the room for it, not because we don't have the need for the food. Keeping in mind with chest freezers, I do want to say the other thing that, if you've been listening to the podcast I've been talking about, is we want a walk-in freezer. We want one that is big enough so that we can put shelves in it and store things in it that way. One that has a door big enough that we can roll a pallet jack right through and roll it into the freezer itself. If you've been listening to the podcast, you probably heard me talk about that, and I said, it's better than keeping it outside, especially in the summer months. Well, I've had questions on what I meant by that. Well, that simply means when we get the food and we bring it in, when it's really hot outside, it takes us some time to get it into the freezers. So that means that the food is out in the elements, or at least inside the building, where it is hot until we get it in. Now, we get it in the freezer within 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how much we have. But if we had a walk-in freezer, we could roll it right in and then sort it right in the freezer and make sure that everything stays cold the entire time. Please understand when I say this, I'm not saying the food is going bad, but we want to make sure that we take every precaution and keep the food as cold as possible so that nothing ever happens. And I want to talk about our pipe dreams some more. So one of our pipe dreams is to have a forklift. That is something that we really need because our shelves go 12 foot in the air, and right now we're having to hand load everything off of ladders. So one person on the floor, one person on the ladder, one person up on the shelf, and it takes quite a bit of time to do that. If we had a forklift, we could load everything onto a pallet, shrink wrap it, and put it up top in a matter of just seconds versus 45 minutes to an hour of taking it up there, and it's also a lot safer. Now, we have someone that thinks that they might be able to help us to get a forklift, but that still is kind of a long shot. So if you're a praying person, keep that in prayer, or if you have the ability to get us a forklift, we'll be happy to take that as well. And now for the big pipe dream that I want to talk about is we have been talking about potentially having a thrift store. Now, this is not something that anything is set in stone right now. It is just in the thought phases right now, the dreaming phase, if you will. And it's something that we would love to do, but the problem is that would take money to be able to set up. And we're already at the point where we're always right on the cusp of having enough because it takes a lot to run Messengers of Hope and because of everything getting more expensive. We do have periodic garage sales, which do help. However, if we had a thrift store, we could just cancel all the garage sales and go to a thrift store method and have a constant source of income. But this is a pipe dream, something that we're talking about. But if this is something that you have experience in or are able to help us, please contact us. We're willing to listen and talk through ideas. Well, that is some of the Messenger Hope needs for this week. Be sure to listen in on this part of the show every week because it could change. It could be adding things or it could be taking things away that we've gotten, and we will share it right here. Okay, everyone, this is the point of the podcast where I get to make an appeal to you, the listener. Messengers of Hope is in need of volunteers to come help work at our warehouse. We have jobs as easy as sorting food and toiletries, items like light cleaning all the way up to lifting and stacking of boxes. If you live in the greater Tampa Bay area and want to serve with Messengers of Hope, reach out today. Go to our Facebook page and message us directly. If you're not local or do not have the ability to volunteer at Messengers of Hope Warehouse, you can still make an impact. Messengers of Hope is in need of financial gifts. Donations are tax deductible as Messengers of Hope is a registered 501c3 nonprofit. You can go to our Facebook page and find an online donation portal or get the address and mail us a check. Any amount helps more than you may think. That's going to do it for this week's Messengers of Hope Mission podcast. In the words of Mother Teresa, if you can't feed 100 people, feed just one. This is Bob Gardner reminding you to make a difference in our world today. See you next time right here on the Messengers of Hope Mission podcast.